TMC to provide. So I'm thrilled with the results that came out of that all-day workshop. But as you heard, we probably still have twice too many projects, or at least twice too much money for those projects, and the CAC is going to have to really buckle down to create an evaluation tool and to discuss and work through the kind of the same sorts of conversations I think that the TMC had, and then allow for time to go a few times with the TMC before getting a master list of projects, I guess you could say, to the board by the end of December. So that's going to be difficult, I think, just given the time. And wow, sorry about that. My voice all of a sudden must have been the stress and thinking about trying to get all these projects reduced. But within that time, we also need to get quite a bit of input directly from the board. And Catherine explained some of the many things on the board's agenda for its upcoming meeting, all of which are important to help the CAC develop this master project list. So lots of activity coming up, and our working group will be trying to get together again here in the next couple weeks to further that conversation. I think that's all I had to add. Don't know if there are any questions, or if John Bernal would like to add anything regarding the TMC work and that interaction with the CAC.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Chair, I will add a little bit. I unfortunately was not able to attend the workshop, but I did catch the recorded version on YouTube and was able to listen to the report outs from the groups that wrote those smaller groups that broke out and reviewed the project. I will also mention that one of the anticipated outcomes was that we identify any issues or concerns that had not surfaced to date, and maybe other data needs. I, for one, had some concern that we didn't know what local contributions or sponsoring jurisdiction contributions we had to go along with the RTA monies, which could have a significant impact in the case, especially of the ADOT project. So those are the kind of issues that I think need to also be put forth. And as Chairman McGovern said, between myself and the other TMC liaison, we will hope to provide some input to the Citizen Advisory Committee next Monday at their meeting. That's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Just to reiterate, are there any questions for anyone? For Tom, John, or Catherine? If not, I'm glad to see Director Skinner is still up there. I'm sorry, did someone step
I
up?
think Tom has a question here.
Okay, Tom, go ahead.
Thanks, Catherine and John and Tom. Do any of the jurisdictions or the unincorporated folks like Southeast Regional Council or the Green Valley Council, is there a window for them to put any more input on projects that they would want, or is this pretty much locked into stone as 108 plus the subcategories? How does that work?
That's a good question. I'll start with the response, but please, Mr. Bernal or Mr. McGovern, feel free to chime in. I would say nothing has been locked in stone yet. We haven't had opportunities to introduce new projects to the proposal since what we submitted in 2020. At that time, we did speak with the Southeast Council to kind of discuss the projects that they had on their wish list, and we tried to include what we could. I know there's been an ongoing desire to have an ability to to present to the CAC, and I can't speak for whether, or to the TMC. I can't speak to whether that opportunity will be provided. That's a process that's being determined by RTA and RTA staff.
Okay. On the subcategories, you mentioned bike. Does that include like drainage projects? That would be capital improvement type projects for some of the roads in the area that aren't for the roadway itself?
At this point, we don't know what it will include. So the examples I gave are examples from the existing RTA program to give an idea of the type of project. So the idea is to have a type of project, but you don't specifically need to call out the project yet, and it provides a little bit more flexibility over a 20-year program to have funding to apply to a certain need or goal for the area. The county, when we submitted our proposal in 2020, it did include a request for an all-weather category of funding, which would include a drainage type improvement, as well as what we called livable streets. So bring us the pedestrian and the bicycle and the transit into roadways that may not need capacity improvements for single occupancy vehicle, but don't really provide the mobility functionality for all the public. So those are two. The other big one that's been discussed, the other two that have been big discussion points is transit, which is a significant part of the current RTA program, and we're not sure what that will look like moving forward. And the pavement maintenance category, will the new RTA include something for pavement repair and maintenance?
Okay, let's see.
Very good. Any other questions? If not, then we really can move to the next topic. HURF bond update.
Yep. I do have slides for this one, so there they go. Thanks, Gilbert. So again, I'm Catherine Skinner, the director of the department, and as requested at our last meeting, here is an update on the Transportation Bond Improvement Plan, which we usually just refer to as the HURF bond program. So back in November of 1997, there was a special election and the voters of Pima County approved the bond program. It was a $350 million, well, I did not mean for that, $350 million program. And what's unique about this, as opposed to other bond initiatives that the county has had, which are repaid by general funds, this is repaid by the HURF funds, so Highway User Revenue Funds. There were 57 projects in that original program, and they were located throughout both the unincorporated areas and the incorporated areas. And they really were to provide a whole host of benefits. Primarily, they were congestion related, but that also improves travel times, it reduces air pollution, and it enhances development opportunities. So, from 1997 to today, 2022, we knew there were going to be changes to that program. And so it was built so that there could be, there's like a delay on this. Sorry. The program was built so that there was the opportunity to modify or amend the program as needs change, as different projects were scoped to get them to be right-sized. And so in order to have a public eye on that and oversight, this bond advisory committee was established. There were 25 members. Amendments would be discussed with them, but then they would also be publicly noticed for a hearing, and the Pima County Board of Supervisors ultimately had to approve those amendments to the ordinance to change scope items. There were 18 amendments in all. When the RTA came about, that was in 2006, there was a lot of adjustments because now a lot of these bond projects would also have RTA funding, and the bond ordinance itself talks about all of the funding sources being brought to bear with these projects. I have linked here the bond project website that goes through all of the projects that have been completed to date. So I did not want to provide an update on every single one of those, but I will give a sampling. So an example of our big roadway corridor projects that were included would be like the McGee, Gilbert, I think there's something that's automatically forwarding the slides, but we'll make it work. Sorry. The .6 McGee Road, La Cañada to Oracle project. So this would have been a typical project. It was a 2-lane facility before the improvement, and when it was improved, it went to a 4-lane divided facility with paved shoulders that are used as bike facilities, sidewalks, curb, gutter, better drainage features. But one important thing is that HURF bonds alone did not pay for these projects. It was a combination of funding sources that made it possible to deliver all these projects. So for this one, it was bonds. We also had contributions from the town of Oro Valley on it, RTA, County HURF, so not HURF bonds, but just the direct county HURF. And this was a federalized project, so we had some FHWA surface transportation money on it. The program also had kind of what was like a categorical project, like we talked about with the RTA, but on the bond program, we called it the .57 safety improvements. So this was a significant amount of money, around $30 million ultimately, and it could be used to leverage other funding sources. So federal funding sources like the Highway Safety Improvement Program requires local match for us to be able to provide those. So we were able to use this .57 HURF bond money as the 5.7% match to federal dollars. And that allowed us to deliver a lot of projects that were sidewalk projects, signalization projects. There's a hawk pictured here, so those pedestrian crossings, as well as upgrades to a lot of our signal infrastructure, battery backup, other things that make those systems more reliable. In all, 85 projects were able to be delivered or leveraged funding for 85 different projects with .57. Remaining bond projects. So we are almost done with the program. On the county side, we are finishing up our very last bond project this calendar year. That's .32, the Kolb Road project from Sabino Canyon Road to Sunrise Drive, rather. This is a combination. It's using impact fees, it's using federal FHWA money, Surface Transportation Program monies, and then the bond money. And that is reconstructing 2 miles of Kolb Road. It's also going to have a roundabout at Territory Drive and multi-use path along it. So we're really excited to wrap up our project. As you can see from these pictures, it looks virtually done now. We're really at the very tail end, new pavements down already. The city also has had some recent big bond projects that we've all probably heard about in the news. Broadway Boulevard from Euclid to Country Club is a project that the county is contributing funding to. Our contribution was actually completed about a year ago, so we have not been contributing this past year, and construction on that one is wrapping up as we speak. .29, Houghton Road, Golf Links Road to Interstate 10. That's a project that's being delivered by the city. It's been phased into about 7 different phases. Our bond contribution has been completed as of last fiscal year. So there are still remaining phases to that project, but there's not a bond contribution still remaining. The last one that does have a contribution is .58, which is 22nd Street, Interstate 10 to Tucson Boulevard. So the segment from about Keno to Tucson Boulevard, the city was just awarded a federal grant to contribute to that construction. It's going to go over the rail yard there. It's a significant project, and that's starting construction imminently. And when that wraps up, the 22nd Street project, which we will be completing our bond contribution to this fiscal year, we will be done spending bond money. So this is a graph, and I know the vertical axis and the horizontal axis are a little hard to read, but it's showing on the vertical axis, it's the amount of money in debt service that we're repaying every year for these debts. So a $350 million issuance, this is the loan repayment. And on the horizontally is showing from the start of repayment in 1999 to 2035. So the high we were paying was upwards of $19 million a year to repay this. Currently, we're about $11 million, and it'll be paid off, like I said, in 2035. So our 10-year pavement program, which we're in year 4 of, has already taken this repayment into consideration, and that savings of HURF that's no longer going to bond debt service is being applied to our pavement program. Again, there's a wealth of information online about the bond program, lots of maps that are interactive. There's links. These 3 are active links. If you go online, you can hit those and get more information. And at this point, if there's any questions, I would be happy to answer them.
Yes, John, go ahead. Yes, John, go ahead.
Well, Catherine, thank you very much for that update. I did ask about all this information. I guess I have a couple questions. There's about $16 million, I think, left in the authorization, the original $350 million authorization. Is all of that going towards the City of 22nd Street project?
That's a great question. Thank you, Mr. Bernal. We do not plan on spending down that remaining $16 million. So there was $10 million in the bond program for 22nd Street. We spent about $900,000 of that in design efforts previously. So there's only about 9.2 remaining that we'll be paying this year for construction.
And I believe, at least I'm hearing in the RTA discussions that perhaps the remainder of, unless you're going to contribute that towards the recently awarded bridge project, the remaining portion of 22nd over I-10, I guess is not going to be done in the near future, is what I'm hearing. Are we contributing to any of that?
No, we will make our full contribution to the portion that's between Keno and 22nd, or Keno and Tucson Boulevard, rather. We'll make our contribution to that phase. About 4 years ago, there was a commitment from the city of Tucson that they would deliver their bond projects, or at least phases of their project, that we would be able to complete our payment of bonds to them during fiscal year 23 or before. And so that's the time frame we're in, and luckily they are moving forward with the one phase that we can pay down on.
Great. The only other question, Catherine, and maybe this one is for another day. You talked about the money that's been saved going into this next fiscal year, perhaps, that's going to be applied towards pavement preservation from the bond debt service. But obviously, looking at that graph, that trend will continue, so you'll be spending less and less for the bond debt service and have more available. Will that all ultimately be applied towards payment pres as you see it now, or will that allow for some other work to come in?
The look-ahead cash flow year program did look ahead the full 10 years. So we already knew what that debt service would look like and the decline in HURF that would have to go to that. So it's really all been accounted for towards our pavement repair program. We reevaluate it every year. Sometimes with changes in interest rate, those fees can change for the debt service. But right now, there's not going to be a significant amount of money that can go to any other purpose at this point.
And I guess I don't recall, do we have, like in this current fiscal year, do we have any county general fund money going towards pavement preservation?
In fiscal year 23, we do have the $50 million of general fund that went towards our pavement program. We've got a $66.8 million program this year. $16.8 million of that is County HURF, and the remainder is the general fund pay-go money.
And so then the likelihood is that nothing else, any county HURF contributions coming from reduced debt service will reduce the general fund contribution.
Yeah, we can follow up. There's a table from a memorandum that went through, is it 2021 memorandum? I remember the exact month, maybe March, and it showed the various funding scenarios for our 10-year program, and it indicated the portion that is general fund, the portion that is department funded, which is generally HURF, for the total investment per year for the program. So that is the best reference in terms of, we've kind of already funded and worked with finance for the future PAYGO general fund money that can be contributed to the program looking forward. So all that's, I wouldn't say set in stone, because every year there's a new budget, but it's the path we've been following these past few years, and I anticipate we'll continue on it. But I will.
That's what Brenda, as we keep heading towards hitting our overall rating for the system of 80 by 2030, it'd be nice to see it continue at some good level to that rather than drop back off. So thanks for the update, Catherine. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. Are there any other questions?
Okay, really appreciate directors. 2 excellent reports, really appreciate it. Okay, we're going to the next topic, which is, are there other topics for future agenda that any of the advisory committee members would like to suggest at this time? Okay, and I'll have one more reminder on the audience, and we're closed. But now we're going to call for the audience, and we're really pleased that we're back in business, and we have folks who are willing to share their concerns and ideas. So I'm going to go with the first one that I received. Phineas Anderson, are you online, or do we see you here? Online. Okay, online. You want to speak to your comments?
You can hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, we're listening.
I submitted a public input form. Do you want me just to repeat what was on that form?
Yes.
All committee members are-
Yes, please, because others in the room don't have that, so it would be nice if you could highlight your comments.
Okay. Most of Wilds Road from Oracle to Largo del Oro was repaved early this year, but the last part of that road from Bowman to Largo was not. And the worst part of that road was not repaved, which was from Appleton to Largo del Oro. I've driven the entire Largo del Oro, and it's going to be repaved, I understand, up to Pinellas County by the end of this year. I only can tell you the last section of Wild Road that was not repaved is worse than any of that. So I'm thinking that, in fact, perhaps a mistake was made with the car that determines the ratings, and my request is that the car go particularly over that section from Appleton to Largo. It goes downhill. It's about 100 meters or so. It's always full of potholes, repaired potholes. It has always a lot of dirt on it, particularly after the rains. It just needs to be worked on. And the reason why I go on it off and on from time to time, but my interest is trying to understand how something that really is the worst section of that entire road was left unpaved. And so if we could possibly relook at that and let me know if it can be done this year rather than 2023 or 2024. And just determine, in fact, if a mistake was made or not. And just, I would appreciate if someone would get back to me about it.
Yes, the staff will prepare a response to each public comment that we receive. But if you were online earlier, you may have gotten a question from Tom Bresney or a comment from him that the survey is going to be repeated this winter and completed by sometime in January. Did we get that right, Michelle?
Correct.
Okay. So precisely what you're asking for is being done. We'd like to take a look periodically to see if something's going on with our roads that may have changed since the last survey, which was about 3 years ago. So thank you for your input. It's very timely. And again, you'll get a response from the staff also. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
You bet. Okay, now we're going to move on to Debbie Smith. If you want to come up to the podium, you'll be able to speak from the speaker. A microphone.
I don't think I need to speak.
Okay, your voice is good. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Debbie Smith, and I'm the secretary of the Rio Robles Association South Side. I sent Ms. Skinner a letter in June about the condition of River Road between Pontotoc and Swan, based on several people who were complaining about it, and I mentioned the teeth-jarring, axle ruining, washboarded road. You were kind enough to respond to me with a letter indicating that you did review that portion of River Road and determined that it was in poor condition. However, you said that all you had a goal to achieve to repair these poor roads by 2030. Now, River Road is a major arterial, east and west, and part of it is paved up to Pontotoc, but the part that doesn't involve any businesses, just residential, is by far the worst that it can possibly be. You guys surveyed it, you determined it to be poor. Is there any way that we could advance the repair before 2030? How could we get it in the queue a little earlier than that? That was my question.
And that is a good question. And our priority system works toward, what should come first. And, it starts with the worst and works down. So we will definitely prepare another response. And Catherine, if you want to comment at this time, feel free.
We will prepare a response. I know this is not a period where we should provide too much response, but as the chair said, we have a pavement prioritization system, one for local roads, one for arterial collectors that we apply for all of our program, and we program 1 year at a time. So it's hard to say, we can't say delivered if it wasn't in the current year program. But with the PCI scan that is going to be done later this year, that'll be factored into our prioritization next year. Yeah.
Yes, and so the committee worked really hard to revise the criteria in terms of where we would do the work, taking into account public comment in the survey that we did. And we're trying to follow that to the best of our ability. So, okay, we have one more, unless Gilbert corrects me with another one after that. But Robert Verbeke, an excellent Dutch name, just like mine. Yeah.
Hi, I'm also from Rio Robles Estates, also known as River Oak Estates from a formal perspective. I'm the president of the Homeowners Association. I just wanted to echo what my colleague Debbie had to say about the condition of the road, and also point out a couple other things. Within the past 12 months, we've had 2 vehicular incidents in that stretch of road. One was an obvious suspension failure of a vehicle that actually left the roadway and hit the wall of our Homeowners Association. I don't know if we can attribute that to the condition of the road or not, but that occurred. And then after that, there was another vehicle that left the road, and our Homeowners Association runs right along River Road. There's a wall area, then a hill, and then there's a cyclone fence area. And this vehicle actually left the roadway, went through the cyclone fence area, and then came back out again. All right, so I don't know whether that was a roadway incident or just somebody that fell asleep or was, not in a condition to drive. I don't know, because we saw the damage afterwards. But the road is in bad shape. It has a washboardy effect and other things. And as Debbie pointed out, it's kind of odd to me that the section of roadway between Pontotoc and Alvernon was repaved, and then it jumped over, and was repaved between Swan all the way to Craycroft. It's just kind of odd to me that section of the road was just ignored, and it was in no worse condition than the other parts of the roadway. In fact, it's since then gotten a little bit worse with the washboard effect. There's a couple of holes that have appeared. So we just want to express our thoughts that we'd really like to have something done about that roadway to improve the condition of it.
Thank you, and we certainly, of course, will be taking a look through the survey that's going to update us, because a lot happens in 3 years.
Yeah.
So-
We've also encouraged our residents who have complained to me, I've encouraged them to do the see, click, fix. And the response we get is very, very professional, but to me, it's like a too bad, so sad type of response.
Yep.
Too bad it's in so shape, and we're sad that it's in such a state, but, well, that's just kind of the way it is. So that's a little bit, we understand the response, but we'd really like to know where we stood in the queue to get that portion of the roadway repaired.
Yeah, and thank you very much again. We appreciate you stepping
Yeah.
forward. Something you should know is, of course, it's the money that's available and how much is available. And we're fortunate, last year we had more money and good money this year, but not all the years before. So we're going to have to see how that goes in terms of coming years. So
Thank
we
you
sort
for
of
your time.
need your input to be able to look at these sort of things. So
Great.
thank you very much. We
Thank you for
appreciate
your
it.
time.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Are there any other public comments? Anybody else on the line, Gilbert? Nope? Okay, hearing none, that takes care of that. Last but not necessarily least, or next to last, our next meeting is October, put my glasses on, 25th. So age does wonderful things. Anyway, the 25th, and if there are any other topics from the committee members, please get them to Annabelle so we can get them on the agenda before the next meeting and all the appropriate materials put together. If there are no other comments, I did want to thank Supervisor Christie for being with us. Did you have any comments if you're still online?
No, thank you very much. I appreciate the work of the committee and the updates. It was a good meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Christie. We appreciate your being with us, as in the past. We do appreciate it. Any other comments? If not, we're going to adjourn. All right, we are adjourned.